In number 1, we have a quadratic where c is negative. Let's do our reverse FOIL procedure. First times first is x squared, so we'll fill in with xx. And last times last is minus 6. So that means that what we're going to fill in here have to have different signs in order that the product be negative. So we're going to fill in two different signs, plus and minus. And last times last is equal to negative 6, so here we can fill in with a maybe a 3 times a 2 or 6 times 1, or maybe in the reverse order. All right, let's look at this middle term here. We want to get a coefficient of plus 1. So I think we won't go with the 6 times 1 because then I think that coefficient would be too big. Let's go with 3 times 2. Now we want this to be positive, so I'm going to fill in with a plus 3 and a negative 2. Let's check the middle term. Let's check inner plus outer. And that should sum to x to the middle term. So that's the correct factorization. So let's look at this general rule that says if we have a quadratic, ax squared plus bx plus c, and if c is negative, then the reverse FOIL process will have either a plus minus or a minus plus as our operations in the parentheses. In other words, the signs will be different. I'm always going to start filling in with a plus minus when c is negative, and sometimes I'll switch to a minus plus if I don't get the right middle term. Okay, here we have another example. Again, c is negative, so I'm going to fill in with different signs. I'm going to always start with plus minus. If my middle term ends up to have the opposite sign, same in absolute value but opposite sign, then we just have to switch the signs to a negative plus. All right, here we'll go with 7 times 3 or 3 times 7. Let's say we filled in with 3, 7. Check the middle term. We have 3x and negative 7x. And that sums to a middle term of negative 4x. Now, we got the correct value if in absolute value, but the wrong sign. So that means that all we have to do here is switch these signs to get the correct factorization. So the correct factorization is x minus 3, x plus 7. Again, when we get the same number but with the opposite sign, just switch from a plus minus to a minus plus. Okay, again, in all these examples in this problem set, c is negative. So I'm always going to start like this. All right, the first term is 3x squared, so we'll fill in with a 3x and an x. And here we have 6, so we want to fill in with factorization of 6. Let's say 3 times 2 or 6 times 1, and the order counts. All right, so let's start with 3 times 2. Now, I'm going to fill in very lightly. I'm going to erase this. I'm going to fill in quickly, very lightly with 3 times 2. And I'll explain why I'm going to reject this right away. If I put the 3 here in the first set of parentheses, then a 3 can be factored out of this first set of parentheses. However, a 3 cannot be factored out of our quadratic, so this must be wrong. Alright, so I'm going to put the 2 here and the 3 here. Alright, now let's check the middle term. 2x, and here we have minus 9x. The sum is negative 7x. We got the opposite sign. Middle term with opposite sign. So all we have to do is switch. Alright, the correct factorization, 3x minus 2, x plus 3. Okay, let's put down our parentheses. C is negative, so opposite signs. Here we have 5x squared, so we'll fill in with first times first, 5xx. And here we have a 6 for our last term, or minus 6 for our last term. So we need a factorization of 6. We could try 2 times 3 or 6 times 1, and keep in mind that this is what we want in the middle, minus 7. If I put, let's say we went with 6 times 1. If I put a 6 here, we'd be up to 30. That's much too big. I wouldn't do that. Okay, so maybe if I put a 6 over here and a 1 over here, well, that's not correct either, but let's just try it. Let's say we tried that. Then we would check it. We'd get 6x minus 5x. All right, we get an x in the middle. No, that doesn't work. So we reject this. And we're going to go with 3 times 2 or 2 times 3. Okay, so we're going to go with 2 times 3, or 3 times 2. And again, we want to get that minus 7 in the middle. All right, so let's try putting the 2 there and the 3 here. And figure out if we have the right middle term. All right, we get a negative 7x, which is correct. That's our middle term. All right, so this is the correct factorization. Okay, let's fill in our parentheses. Let's start with plus minus, because C is negative. For first, 5xx. All right, here we have 33. So we can factor that as 3 times 11 or 33 times 1. I'm not going to go with 33 times 1 because I think my middle term would be too big. So I'm going to stick with 3 times 11. Now if I put the 11 over here, I would get a 55. If this were 11, multiplying here, I get 55. Again, that middle term would be too big. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try putting the 11 here and the 3 here. All right, let's check what we get. 11x. And here we get negative 15x. So we have a middle term of minus 4x, and that's correct. That's what we want. So this is the right factorization. Okay, here we'll start with our parentheses and our signs, different signs. And we have 6x squared. Well, we have two choices. We could put 6xx or 3x2x. I'll start with 3x2x. And if we don't find the right factorization, then we'll go with 6xx. But first we'll start with 3x2x. And here we have 21. We can try, let's see, if we try 21 times 1, I think our middle term will be too big. So I'm going to go with 7 times 3. If I put the 7 here, I'll get a 21. Again, too big. So I'm going to put the 7 here, and I'm going to put the 3 here. All right, let's try this. So here we have 14x, and here we have negative 9x, and that gives us a positive 5x. So that's correct. That's what we have here, positive 5x. So this is the right factorization.